All right, what is up, everybody? Mad Hatter. Definitely glad to see everybody today. Again, I am streaming on three different platforms: Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And so, certainly excited to see everyone here so far. Excited about what we're going to be jumping into today. Got a lot of things on my mind that I've from the things that I've seen this week. I'm gonna try to be a little. There's some things that I am definitely puzzled about, and so we're just gonna jump right into it. Just give me 1 second to push a couple of buttons here to make sure that we're doing well on all sides. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, feel free to chime in. I'll be monitoring my screens to see if there's anything that anyone has to say, any feedback that you guys have. Let me know. If there's any question that you want me to answer, let me know, and I will try to answer them as best as I can. Right now, I am working on the Four Horses of the Apocalypse by Anatolian Puzzles. This puzzle, not gonna lie, kind of gave me a little bit of apprehension when I first tried to put this thing together because it's just so many pieces. I went and got the 2,000 piece one. There's a 1,500 piece one. Probably should have sprung for that. But then after watching others do their thing on various puzzles they've been working on, 2,000 piece puzzles, and kind of motivated me to jump back into this. And so after I got done with the Three Graces, if you've been following my page, after I get done with that beautiful piece, decided to come back to start working on this. So, if you're watching from Mad Hatter Puzzle Art's page, you'll see the shot of the actual puzzle pieces, and so you can kind of watch that video on Facebook of me putting this puzzle together as we're talking about the things that I'm puzzled about this week. This week, let's get my book out real quick. This week, I was puzzled about 5 particular things. But there's some things that did come up that I don't really particularly want to talk about. But there are 5 things that I do want to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the Oscars and the fact that some people felt snubbed about nominated. Actually lost $2.6 million in a phishing scheme. That's interesting. We're going to talk about the fact that there's a turtle that was used to save his entire species, and I thought that was really cool that that happened. And we're going to talk about the fact that, and this was an interesting discovery I found, that you have different schools different states are using the same textbook, but that their textbooks are written to agendas within those states. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then just as a kind of a food for thought thing, Junior, going to talk a little bit about him and his situation and talk about what's going on with that. Again, if you have any questions or if you have any comments as the podcast is going on, feel free to chime in. I'm going to be here for about an hour and a half. And I know that Instagram has an hour timeline. And so if we go over time, I'm going to just go live again. So just feel free to jump back in once that live feed cuts out on Instagram. But again, right now I'm working on the Anatolian puzzle, again known as the Four Horses of the Apocalypse. If you go on Mad Hatter Puzzle Art's page on Facebook, you can see the live shot of me actually putting the puzzle pieces together, if that's something that you're interested in. But again, welcome to the Mad Hatter is Puzzled podcast. I'm looking forward to talking with you all today about some things that I'm puzzled about this week, and we're just going to jump right into it. The first thing that I want to talk about being puzzled about today is the fact that there is a school district that lost $2.6 million. I'm sorry, $2.3 million in a phishing email scam. I got this report from CNN where it says that the Texas authorities and the FBI are investigating after the Manor Independent School District lost about $2.3 million in a phishing email scam. And these scams were 3 separate fraudulent transactions throughout the scam that all took place in November. It says that the Manor ISD appreciates the Manor Police Department working together to communicate this to our community. And then, let's see, it got cut off a little bit on the page that I printed. As they say at the bottom with any phishing scam, they say that they ask you that the people who are phishing ask you to click on a link and give passwords and bank account numbers. If you click on the link, they can install programs that lock you out of your computer and can steal your personal information. For me, I guess I was just a little dumbfounded over the fact that it's 2020 and we're still falling for phishing schemes. I mean, again, I don't know what may or may not have happened. I'm not sure exactly how it went down. You know, I remember an instance at a job that I was working at where nice little lady who doesn't know how to work computers to save her life got an email and told her to click on it was outdated. And so she ended up pressing the button, and sure enough, she shut down the whole system, not just for herself, but for the entire network. And that network was actually across the entire state, if I'm not mistaken. And so I know that these things can happen. I've definitely not been a stranger to them, but I'm just thinking that in the world that we live in today in 2020, phishing scams would be something of a relic at this point, because for real, like there's no reason at this point for anybody to be falling for phishing schemes where you're giving up exorbitant amounts of money to people. They said that in 3 transactions, they gave up $2.3 million. $2.3 million. So it's not like they got like say $57 here or $125 there. No, these jokers were able to fish away $2.3 million. My wife was talking about it earlier, and she said that she was dumbfounded because it doesn't make sense for them to have lost that much money, and was scared about, you know, where the money went, how they were going to get the money back, on. And fortunately, in situations like this, monies are protected, and I'm confident that the school district and everything will get their money back. And so it's really not so much a knock against anyone, because it could happen to the best of us. It's why they tell us when you check your emails and when you're checking your transactions online, that you make sure that you're going about it the right way, that you make sure that the websites that you're using are protected with the HTTPS, with the lock symbols and all sorts of kind of things to make sure that you're not doing anything that would jeopardize your information. I know, you know, Amazon is big and Walmart is big and, you know, doing things online. And so it can lead to some, you know, hesitancy of wanting to do any type of transactions online. And so those things are going to happen. And it's going to make it, in situations like these, are going to make it that much more, make it that much more difficult to want to even do them, transactions online. But just protect yourselves. You know, if you see an email that doesn't come from anything that you are familiar with, if you're, you know, on your email addresses and you're in your inboxes, and don't touch it. I'm often having to make sure that the things that I'm looking at, that the things that I'm scanning, that they are not, from respected places. And I know sometimes the emails that we get can look like they come from legitimate places. I get emails from Amazon all the time, but it's not necessarily Amazon that's emailing me. Sometimes it'll say like Amazon rewards or Amazon, billing or Amazon this or whatever. And so as I began to, be more involved with online banking, not online banking, but online shopping, I had to be cognizant and start thinking about, okay, who is actually sending me this stuff? Is this really Amazon.com or is this, I like that. Or is this Amazon, or is this someone that's posing as Amazon trying to get information out of me? And so again, it's just a reminder for us all that we be careful when we're opening our emails, that we be careful when we're opening our text messages, when we're opening our Facebook messages, that we're not falling victim to anyone who may be trying to send us something that would turn into a fishing expedition, and we end up losing all of our information. In the world that we live in today, and I'm a strong advocate for it. So I'm in no way trying to say we need to go back to the dark ages where we don't have any of this stuff. I'm so grateful for online banking. I'm so grateful for, for online shopping, all that stuff. I'm pro all of it. If y'all have ever seen my puzzle collection, most of that came from Amazon and Gallison.com and Anatolian.com and on and on and on I can go. So I'm grateful for the online to do that you are going about it in a way that secures your information and protects you from situations where you may find yourself losing out on not just your accounts, but your money, your social security information, the whole 9 yards. Because there are some very sophisticated people out there that do a lot of bad things. We're going to use it for ulterior motives, and there's nothing we can do about that. So rather than get frustrated and again just kind of live under a rock, instead we just protect ourselves and make sure that we're doing everything that we can to ensure that our information is protected when we go about doing the things that we do. I feel bad for the school district that had to go through that. Again, probably not even, the devil, just, some person just pushed a random button 3 separate times and ended up, costing the school a whole lot of money. Again, and I'm pretty sure they're protected. So it's not the end of the world, as kids will still be able to do whatever they have to do and everything will be paid for and everything will be right with the world. So again, it's kind of puzzled a little bit that we're still in, we're in the 21st century, 2020, where we're supposed to have flying cars by now, Jetsons, and yet we still are dealing with things that should not even be mentioned of at this point. If you have any questions or comments or anything of that nature, feel free to chime in at any time. Be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And it doesn't even have to be about any of the topics that I'm referring to. You can ask me pretty much anything. I am a semi-open book. And so I'm willing to answer any questions or any comments or concerns that you guys have throughout the podcast today. Second thing I wanted to talk about today as I'm trying to put some of these pieces of this puzzle together is the fact that there was a turtle who went into retirement on, I think last week, if I'm not mistaken. Got the report right here. The piece of it got cut off, unfortunately, so I'm not going to be able to read it all to you. But the story coming from CNN says that that basically they were calling him a playboy tortoise. That he basically saved his entire species and is now going home. The CNN report says a womanizing tortoise whose rampant sex life may have single-handedly saved his entire species from extinction has retired from his playboy lifestyle, returning to the wild with his mission accomplished. First off, as if he had a mission in life to say, I'm going to go save my species. Can we not personify this to the point where, anyway, Diego's unstoppable libido was credited as a major reason for the survival of his fellow giant tortoises on Hispaniola, part of the Galapagos Islands, after being shipped over from the San Diego Zoo as part of a breeding program. The desirable shell dweller had so much sex that he helped boost the population to over 2,000. The Galapagos National Park Service believed the 100-year-old tortoise is the patriarch of around 40% of that population. And I thought that was so cool. I'm not really one to be all up about some animals and things like that. But I thought it was just really cool to see a story about an animal saving his entire species, or being a major contributor in saving his entire species. And I don't know if he, was thinking about wanting to save the species or not. I'm pretty sure he wasn't really thinking too much about anything except just being a turtle. But the San Diego Zoo, the Galapagos Islands, they did a rescue mission of sorts to make sure that this species of turtle continued to survive and continue to move forward. And they were successful in that, very successful in that. Again, they said that the population grew from about, I think when I was watching the video that Now This did on it, it was saying that the turtle population at the time that they had brought him onto the island was about 12 altogether, or something along those lines. And it grew with him being there from 12 to now, as he's going, quote unquote, into retirement, grew into 2,000. And that he was a contributor to about 40% of that population's growth. And so big ups to the zoo for doing their part in preserving the species. It's often said in Christianity that God has, made us the viceroys of the world. That we are, what's it called? My brain always does this. That basically that we are to take care of God's creation, that we are to take care of the things that God has given us. And a lot of times we, in this day and age, we don't think about the conservation of all of God's species. In no way am I trying to say that turtles are more important than people. But there is something to be said about caring for God's creation, to be a part of the cultural mandate, to take care of the things that God has given us, to take care of all of that, God has provided for us. And so for us to care enough to want to preserve an entire species of animals is something to be valued. Again, in no way, am I advocating that we take care of animals over people. I feel like people, should definitely come first. But I don't think that, caring about people and caring about animals have to be mutually exclusive. There's a lot of circles out there that talk about animal rights and wanting people to, take care of the animals, and so much so that they would rather animals be taken care of than people be taken care of. And again, I think that's a dangerous slope to be walking down. But again, I think that there's something to be said about caring about animals and caring about the fact that the species go on. I often think about what life would be like if the dinosaurs still existed today. Not that I'm looking for a Jurassic Park type experience, because I've seen enough movies to know that the people will never win in that argument. So I'm not out here saying that we need to, try to recreate the dinosaurs with some, mosquito blood and all that kind of stuff. But again, I think it's just something to worth noting, something worth appreciating and valuing when we see people who actually do care about the preservation of animals and the preservation of life. I don't want my children or their children or their children's children to grow up in a world where certain animals don't exist. It's very sad that some animals don't exist anymore, and that kind of sucks. And I don't know how anybody feels about global warming and all that kind of stuff, but when I see some of these polar bears that are out there right now that are looking like who done it and what for, and they're starving and they're looking to find something to eat and all those sort of things, it's disheartening to see that we have kind of contributed to that to a certain degree. And so again, I'm not saying that we need to go out and start campaigns and drives and all that kind of stuff. I mean, if you want to do that, by all means, no, I'm not saying you shouldn't. But again, just saying that there's something to be said and something to be valued and appreciated when you see a story like this, where all the hard work and the efforts that people have gone to ensure the preservation of life. That's something to be treasured and something to be valued. Now, I will say that I feel like that same energy and effort should go toward the preservation of human life as well. And again, those don't have to be mutually exclusive. That you can care about people just as much as you care about animals. You can care about animals just as much as you care about people. And that goes in varying degrees. And so, we can split hairs on what that means and what I mean and all that kind of stuff on another day. But again, I just feel like it's something to be said and something to be valued and treasured when you see a story like this where, these guys who put in this time, effort, and energy to preserve their species, that it actually worked itself out. And I'm grateful to have seen that and grateful that, it worked out for them. And so my hat's off to them. And I hope that, Diego, as they named him, goes on to have a happy retirement after doing all that he did to preserve his race, to preserve his species, probably not even realizing that that's exactly what he was doing. Again, if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, if you have anything that you would like to ask me, it doesn't have to be about the topics that we're talking about today. Feel free to chime in at any given time. As a disclaimer, I forgot to say this at the very beginning of our podcast. Two things. One, I am, just a guy who is a nerd and reads stuff and sees stuff. I am not in any way, shape, or form affiliated with any like newscastings or anything like that. I'm very, very new to all this type stuff. And again, I just like to read a lot. And so I'm not by any way someone who knows a whole lot about how to do all this stuff. I'm really just learning as I go about how to talk about any of this stuff in a way that, makes any type of sense. Secondly, even though I am, doing puzzles and things like that, and will tell you what puzzles I'm working on, in no way is my opinions affiliated with any of the puzzle makers or any of the companies that I am, using as part of this podcast. These are all my opinions. They're all on my own. So don't be getting mad at Anatolian or getting mad at, Gallison or anyone like that. If I say something that may offend you, they are no way affiliated with me. In my opinions, these are just my thoughts on what I'm seeing out there in the world. I just happen to be putting the puzzle together at the same time, which, by the way, I'm making very little progress today. If y'all are watching the Mad Hatter, video, like I'm making very, very little progress on this thing. I'm trying my hardest, and it's just gonna be what it's gonna be. And so this puzzle is so hard. Y'all pray for me. We gonna make it. We gonna make it. I'm gonna be done with it at some point in life. All right. So let's see. The third thing that I wanted to talk about today. Let me see. Where's my notebook? I don't want to forget where I'm going. Okay, so the third thing I wanted to talk about today was something that I found interesting from the New York Times. The New York Times wrote a piece in their, magazine or newspaper regarding textbooks and the fact that different states will use the same publishing company to publish as the books that they'll use in their schools. But they will ask that particular company to either omit things or add things to the books based on their political stand. I found that very fascinating. It's something that I never thought about before. It's something that puzzled the snot out of me when I read it. Recognizing that it makes sense, but it still sucks. So basically what happens is when a book is, when a textbook publishing company is ready to dish out the next edition of their book, they will consult with the different state, school boards. and ask them, what in the book they want in it, what they want to omit from it, what they want to add to it. And they will consult with these different state governments to determine what's going to go in their book. In the report that I read, they had looked at the difference between Texas and California's history books and found several changes from one state to another when it came to what was in the books. Now, again, I'm not trying to get into a political firestorm or anything like that. But I, again, just want to make mention of one example that they talked about. They said that that when it came to the Second Amendment, there was one in California. They had a blurb on the side of that Second Amendment that talked about how the amendment itself had been used for gun regulation, for better or worse. It wasn't trying to spew anything, but just said for better or worse, this is what it was. And then on the in Texas, they had omitted that blurb out of that part of the book, and they said that what they do is they consult with these different states and ask them, what do you want added to the book? And one of the things that it was talking about was the fact that it's politically driven based upon who is in the seat at the time and what type of that the paper the paper the New York Times had came to was that this is what helps drive children's thinking in different states about the political process in terms of what their thoughts are toward this or toward that. Mind you, first century people gonna make up their own minds, do what they want to do, but we know California's for the most part more liberal and Texas is more conservative. You got your pockets here and there, and everyone has their own opinion of things, but it is what it is. And because of who's in the seat at that time, they're going to decide what's going in the books and what the children are going to learn in these books. And so, again, I found that very fascinating that is what happens. And that, again, these publishers are consulting these people because the publishers obviously want to make money. And then in order to make money, they got to sell books. In order to sell books, they got to put a book out there that people want to read. Or in this case, that the teachers or the state legislatures want to teach the states. And so, again, it's kind of scary in a little bit, in my opinion, because what that says to us is that even though they're not necessarily, omitting history, the commentary of said history is driving thought, and it's driving thought in the lives of our kids. Again, I'm always ever so mindful and prayerful that our kids are being trained to have their own mind and think their own thoughts and things like that. But we do influence and impact the way that they think, and we are shaping their minds whether we want to admit it or not. In the 21st century, we would hope and expect that they would have a little more creativity in terms of kids. That kids would be able to get information on their own, be able to make up their minds a little bit better than we may have been in the past, given our limited access to information. But again, in the world that we live in today, because there's such a plethora of information out there now, it's so difficult to be able to kind of drive, thought and to drive, how kids think, and try to impact them in a way that allows them to make up their own minds. I think that by us, manipulating, books and omitting this and adding that and things like that, we're steering our kids in a particular direction when we do that, instead of allowing them to just see the facts as they are and then make up their own mind. In the world that we live in today, more so than any other generation, we are not driven by fact, but we're driven by opinion. And because we are so driven by our opinions, it's almost as if that's what we're looking for now. We see it all across, the media. We see it in the news. We see it in sports. We see it in movies. We see it in TV. We see it in music. That it's not who actually has the facts that is the person that we trust the most. It's the person who makes the most noise. It's the person who has to on behalf of this or speak on behalf of that. So opinion, because it's the catalyst for driving a lot of the thoughts that we have, more so than any other generation. It kind of puts us in a bad place right now, where the next generation, it's hard to say whether or not they actually will be able to tell the difference between truth, between truth and half truth, truth and no truth, because everything, it seems to be, is truth now. There is no such thing as absolute anymore, and that's very unfortunate, because from where I'm sitting, there is absolute truth. We just sometimes choose to ignore it because it's not going to serve us at the time that truth is available to us. And so, again, this kind of was a little heartbreaking to see that that's kind of where we are right now, where we have allowed for such a long time for our state legislatures to dictate what our kids are learning, not from a truth perspective, but from a political perspective of trying to drive the thoughts. I want you to think this way. I don't want to just give you facts and then you figure it out on your own. I want to kind of steer it in a particular direction. And so, again, very, very puzzled by that today. Very puzzled by that this week, and thought I would share that with you all today. And if you have any questions or concerns of your own, feel free to ask anything that you may have, that you may want to know. Just let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer any question that you may have on today. And again, thank you all for your viewership so far. Grateful for those who I've seen who have joined on. And again, if you do have any questions or you do have any comments, feel free to chime in at any time. I'm here. The next thing that I want to talk about today is Odell Beckham Jr. and the fact that he basically is like having the time of his life at the expense of, I don't know, everything, I guess. I don't know. Had the college football playoff on Monday. One of the best games I have ever seen in my life. Joe Burrow and LSU came back from the dead and lit up the scoreboard in a way that I have not seen in college football in such a long time. I did not stay up to watch the end because by the time they got to where they got, it was pretty much over. And I was like, there's no point in me staying up no more. And I was completely 100% right in doing that. Thank God I got a little bit of sleep, because when I got to work the next day, half my coworkers were like, I don't even know how I'm functioning today, because that game was so awesome. And that game was indeed the best game I had ever seen in a very long time. And, hats off to LSU. You guys proved to be the perennial winners of this college football year. And so y'all got mad props to y'all and what y'all were able to accomplish. So, pretty much on like Tuesday, Wednesday of the championship week, we're done with college football. We're basically just talking about where people's futures are going to end up. People are becoming coaches of this and coaches of that, and people are losing staff and blah, blah, blah. Same old, same old. And, life is just kind of moving on. But for some reason or another, the college football world just cannot seem to move on. And they can't seem to move on because all this story that keeps coming up about Odell Beckham Jr. and the fact that he, celebrated just a little bit too much. So Odell Beckham Jr., he is the football player for the Cleveland Browns. He was he's a former LSU alum. He played for LSU. From what I can gather, he didn't particularly win any championships with, LSU during his tenure there. but it obviously made enough noise to get on the national level. Plays national football, has played for the New York Giants, and is now again playing for Cleveland. And all this year, he's been making noise here and there for various reasons, and people are gonna be people, so it's like whatever. He's a football player, he's gonna make noise. This particular week, he's been making noise in a way that's kind of been throwing people, for a loop a little bit. He gave money to football players after the game was over, college football players, and that caused a little bit of a stir because football players in college are not allowed to make have any type of financial compensation, or it could cost them their eligibility. We find out later on in the week that he slapped an officer on his butt while in the locker room. And it wasn't a police officer, it was a security officer, tomato, tomato. And so, just made a whole bunch of boneheaded decisions over these past few days. And, it's kind of turned the sports world upside down because you have people that are on one side or the other. Some people saying, he was just basically that, drunk uncle who grabbed the mic during the wedding reception, and everybody's just kind of like, bro, you need to sit down. Others are calling it so egregious that he needs to think about the consequences of his actions, and the fact that he's cost people money and jobs and all that kind of stuff, and some kids may not be able to play football next year and have to get money back. My thoughts on all of this. On one hand, it's like, okay, he was dumb, he was stupid, he shouldn't have done that. Let's move on. It's really not that big of a deal. Like, why are we making that big of a deal? It's really not that deep. Let's just move on and go about the rest of our day. Whatever. And so on one hand, it's like, I'm kind of like, can we just move on from all of this? But on the other hand, I'm kind of like this, and I think I'm leaning more this way than I am the other way. And again, your comments and your your concerns are much appreciated if you were to chime in on this one, because I'm still kind of on the fence with it all. But here's where I'm going with it. I know that Odell Beckham Jr. Sorry, bro, I just butchered your name. Is an athlete. He's a football player, and he plays with a lot of passion. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's based going off of how he feels. And I get that. Been there, done that. Got that T-shirt more times than I can count. Sometimes you just go with how you feel, and that's just what it's going to be. Consequences be darned. But I think that is part of the problem. I think that for a lot of people, especially people like him, who have amassed all this wealth, all this fame, and have done so at a relatively rapid rate, don't really think about the consequences of their actions. They don't think about how what they do may impact someone else. And so when they go about making these rash decisions and they go about doing things in the heat of the moment, they don't take the time to really consider how what they're doing is going to impact the next person. And so, when he's doing all these different things, when he's grabbing the megaphone and, won't give the megaphone up, when he's, giving money on camera to kids who, whose eligibility is contingent upon them not taking money from anyone under any circumstances, lest their eligibility be called into question. When you're, slapping the butt cheek of an officer of the law, to whatever degree it is, it don't matter whether he's officially a cop or whether he's a mall cop. He's got a badge and he's got authority, he's got power that comes with that to some degree. When you have all those things in place, You know, it is incumbent upon somebody to be the adult in the room. And unfortunately, in this particular case, there was no adult in the room telling Odell Beckham, "Hey, bro, you probably need to calm that down. Hey, bro, you probably need to slow that down a little bit. Hey, bro, you need to chill out just a little bit with that." There's no one in the room telling him that. Now, mind you, let's think about the circumstances. Yes, it's a champion. It's a championship. Yes, your team just won. Yes, people are in a good mood. It's a good vibe. Blah 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 blah. But at the end of the day, someone has to be the adult in the room and be willing to scope out the landscape enough to be able to say, "Hey, this should not be happening," or "Hey, yes, let's do it, but let's do it this way." Or, maybe we should slow it up just a little bit before, this person or that person comes in, or someone sees this, or, we end up in a worse state than where we are right now. And unfortunately, for people like him, in some instances, not all, but in some instances, there's no one in the room to check that person, to check him and say, "Hey, let's slow this down just a little bit before things get worse." And so what you have now is a situation where, again, people can get mad with the NCAA for, everything that they do and don't stand for and all that kind of stuff. Talk about, the fact that kids need to be compensated and all this other kind of stuff. But at this current juncture in time, the rules are what they are. The lay of the land is what it is. And until it changes, we have to go by what those rules are and what they say we are, and what we aren't, what we can, what we can't do. We can be mad about the rules. Hey, we can talk about the rules all day, but at the end of the day, that they still stand as of right now. And so someone, again, has to be an adult in the room and say, "Hey, we can't do it like this. Hey, we can't do it like that. Hey, let's just slow our roll just a little bit, so that we ensure that we're not jeopardizing someone else's career. We're not jeopardizing somebody else's livelihood. We're not jeopardizing somebody else's way of life at this point." Because at the end of the day, Odell Beckham Jr. is not going to be hurt by any of this. He gets to go back and play football again. He gets to go back and do his job. He gets to go back and make his money. He gets to go back and do all those things. But for these kids whose lives, were changed in a moment by, them, completing what felt like the impossible, now the very thing that they did is being called into question. And in doing so, now their entire futures are hanging in the balance, because at any given moment, someone may come around and say, "You can't play anymore, because of this," or "We got to let you go because of that." And, all the while they're like, "But I wasn't the one that asked for it. He just gave it to me." But it's like, so what? You shouldn't have accepted it. Because you accepted it, now we got to do this, and now we got to do that. And now you got to sit out a whole year of football, or worse, never play football again, because of something that you didn't even ask for. And so again, I'm not saying that Odell Beckham Jr. is a bad man. I'm not saying that he's, this. I'm not saying that he's that. What I am saying is that he's a bonehead, that he should have thought about what he was doing before he did it. Just not, and again, not even for his own sake, but just for the sake of the kids. And I'm saying the word kids as if they're like 2 years old, man. These jokers are freaking juggernauts, for crying out loud. They're not kids. But, at the same time, who's going to turn down $500 that you slapping in my hand? I'm not going to turn it down. I'm not an idiot. I'm going to go spend it on something. So it's like, I'm not expecting these kids in college to tell Odell Beckham Jr., "No, I can't accept this." Nah, bro. It's in the heat of the moment, the spur of the moment things going on. Yeah, I'm probably going to take that money and I'm going to go spend it on something. I'm going to spend it on myself, or spend it on my wife, or spend it on somebody. Let somebody give me, that kind of cash, on the spur. And so again, all that just to say, we should be wise in the things that we do and the things that we say, because the things that we do and say, they have a much bigger impact than what we think they do. And a lot of times we're not thinking about, how our actions and how the decisions that we make, how they impact somebody else. And so if we're doing that, then we're doing all the people whose lives we're connected to a disservice when we don't think about how our actions may end up hurting someone else in the long run. Odell Beckham Jr., for all we know, he wasn't thinking about it at all. He was just in the heat of the moment. He was feeling good. It was a good time, and he just wanted to celebrate with who he felt were his bros at the time, not realizing that the things that he was doing was going to have a much bigger impact much later down the line. Now that this gotten out that he's done all these different things. So the last thing I heard about it was that he was being charged with with a misdemeanor for slapping the butt cheek of the security officer, which again is dumb. But it is what it is, and like I said, I just wish that he would have thought about his actions rather than just doing what he did, and now having to deal with all these dumb ramifications that should have never come to pass in the first place. If you have any questions or comments, if you have anything you'd like to add to it, let me know. I'm right here. And again, just looking forward to continuing on with this, and thanking you all for your viewership thus far. As I'm talking about the things that I am puzzled about. If you're noticing on Mad Hatter Puzzle Art, I am making a little bit of progress with a piece of this. I actually wish I would have gotten the box so I can see what I'm actually looking at right now. But I've actually got a piece of this put together right here. I'm going to try to move this camera slightly so y'all can see what I see right here on Instagram. If you're on Facebook, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to see it. Let me see if I can wrap it around. Y'all can see what I've gotten accomplished. This part right here is what I've been able to kind of put together so far. Got some other slight pieces here, but that's the monster I've been dealing with for the past 45 minutes. All right. Again, if y'all have any questions or concerns or anything, feel free to chime in at any time. We're about to enter into our last segment on tonight, and then I'm going to let y'all go. We're going to talk about these Oscar snubs. So I have been paying attention to the yearly movie awards. Every year, the not the Grammys. Listen to me, until I'm a music head. The Academy Awards, the Screen Actors Guild Awards, the Golden Globe Awards, Daytime and Primetime Awards. All those things are well on their way now. And this past, I think it was Monday, the award nominees came out for the Oscars. And there were a lot of considerable snubs from all categories, including Best Picture and Best Director. Basically all the directors were white. All the directors were male. All the movies were directed by white males. They said that there were no people of color that were nominated. There were no women that were nominated this year for those two major categories. There's also, I think, a snub in the supporting actress category. I think they said that they were expecting Jennifer Lopez to at least be nominated for her role in Hustlers, which I haven't seen. So for her to have a supporting actress nod, even in conversation, for that movie, it intrigues me a whole lot, all things considered. So just putting that out there. But again, there was those this year. And so it turned into this whole thing, a hashtag Oscar. Issa Rae, when she read the nominees for, I think it was Best Director, when she finished, she said, "Congratulations to those men." That caused a big stir. If you're noticing right now, I got a little snacky, so I'm going to eat a piece of this brownie that I made earlier today as I'm talking about this. Oh, it's so good. But yeah. So when she made that comment and that caused a stir, and she talked about it later on. And so it's caused a huge uproar. And people are talking about, once again, the Academy being insensitive to, women, being insensitive to people of color. And so it's turned into this whole firestorm over again, which is a repeat of the Oscar situation that happened several years ago. So it brought up this conversation. I'm going to say it as fast as I can because I know with Instagram it's about to go out, but I'm going to give this as much credence as I can. And again, if you're watching this now or if you're watching this later, feel free to please chime in because I would love to get y'all's opinion on all this stuff. So it brought about this thought in my head as I was thinking about what I was reading across the landscape. It's very difficult in my mind, and so I'm just going to put this out there, and y'all, again, just whatever that we live in today, to allow for people to be judged solely on their merits. In the world that we live in today, it seems as though there has to be given a handicap for everything that we do now. Like there's no longer a space that is sacred enough for us to be judged solely by the merit of the work itself. As I was talking to my friend about the snubs and things, she said something that made a lot of sense to me, and I'm going to try to see what she said and then, turn it on itself. And she said that in particular, when it comes to the Academy Awards, when it comes to the Oscars, that it's very difficult for people whose lives have not been in which some of these movies have been made to have the same effect on the people who are watching it compared to the ones who made it. That because the people who are watching the movies and making the judgment calls on which movie is best versus not, haven't experienced what those who are making these movies, who don't look like them, don't sound like them, don't act like them, haven't been through what they've been through, it makes it that much more difficult for the people who are judging the content to then say that this content is worthier of this or that compared to another person. And so what basically, to try to synthesize that, I can't expect a white person to appreciate a black film like a black person would, no more than I should expect a black person to experience a white movie like a white person would. And so if a white person is judging a black movie based on that white person's experience in life, I should not expect them to appreciate or value the movie much like a black person would. I should not expect that. And so what the argument has been is either to judge the movie based on what it is without the biases, or to create a group of a collective of a collection of experiences that can then judge a movie based on all those biases and then come to a consensus within that group of which movie is the best or not. And so in saying that, and I hope I said that the way I was trying to say it, in saying that, the challenge has become for me in trying to understand, awards and all those sort of things. At what point do we then say that based on everything that came out this year, these were the best movies of the year? Period. It ain't about being white. It ain't about being black. It ain't about being Asian. It ain't about being Hispanic. It ain't about being a man. It ain't about being a woman. Out of all the movies that came out in 2019, these were the best movies of the year. And because these were the best movies of the year, one of these movies that we believe is the best of the year is going to win Best Movie of the Year. And that's it. Out of all the movies that were directed this year, these were the best directed movies. Whether you're black, white, purple, pink, rich, poor, male, female, whatever, these were the best movies. And because these are the best movies, these are the best directors, these are the best directions that these directors gave, these are the ones who we feel will be the best. And so one of these people is going to get this award. And that's it. I think that at some point we have to bring the conversation back to, which movies are actually the best movies of the year. Because when I went and looked at the list, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't say it right now. I'm scared if I touch my computer, it's going to shut down. But when I looked at the nominees, the movies that are the nominated ones for best movie and best director, from what I can tell, those were actually movies of the year. Now, again, my personal opinion, Endgame was the best movie of the year. I don't care what anybody says. If you haven't seen Endgame, go watch Endgame. That was the best movie of the year. And it not because it did us any real justice, because I'm still kind of skittish about how that thing all ended, but it did what I needed it to do, satisfied my soul, and I'm a better man for it. And so for me, Endgame was the best movie, and Endgame ought to be the one to get all the awards, but we know that ain't gonna happen, so whatever. Nevertheless, the best movies were actually the best movies this year. And so it's like, again, not discounting anyone's experience, not discounting anyone who feels slighted, not discounting anyone who felt like they were snubbed. Because, again, there were some snubs. But at what point can we honestly just say, you know what? I put my best work out there this year, and it wasn't enough. Because everybody can't win. Everybody can't be nominated. And it's, oh my gosh, it's kind of like how people were talking about affirmative action. I'm grateful that for the opportunities that affirmative action may have afforded me, because I'm not sure whether it did or didn't. I grew up in a time where it was kind of dying out at the time, and more inclusion was happening in a way that, it really didn't affect me as much. So I can't really speak on whether or not that had any impact on me whatsoever. So for me, most of my life has been based on me, trying to, go through the meritocracy system. And I had, like I said, I've experienced my share of racism and all those sort of things. So I'm not saying that my whole life was blessed to be shielded from all of that. But most of my experience has been based on the meritocracy. Whoever is the best is going to get it, period. And again, I'll talk about some stuff later on in life that happened to me. So it's like, at what point, so what I'm saying is, like, I feel, for me, I wouldn't want someone to give me the award or give me a nomination just because I'm black. Like, I don't want that token, nomination just as, oh, we got to pick a black guy. Or, oh, we got to pick a woman. I don't want that nomination. I don't, because that feels cheap to me. Like, you only picked me because you had to pick a woman. You didn't pick me because you thought my work was actually the best. You just picked it because you thought that, because you had to fill a quota, you had to meet a goal. And so, though I'm grateful for all the diversity that had happened over these past couple of years and thought that maybe we were moving forward, all things considered, at the same time, it's kind of like it would feel cheap to me that you only picked me as a nominee because you had to fill a quota, which means that you may not have had the intent to give me the award to begin with. You may not have intended to give me, the award. You may not have intended to even give me the nomination. And so, for me, it feels like I don't know how I really feel about, getting the nomination just because I'm black, or getting the nomination because I'm a woman, or getting the nomination because you got to fulfill some role. Like, again, it feels like it's cheapened to me. So at what point, and so again, hold that thought for just 1 second. Let that work itself out. Okay. And so at what point do we say, okay, I know we gotta fulfill a role, I know we gotta do this, but at the same time, when can we just band together and say, let's just judge the movies based on what they are? And if I win a nomination, great. If I don't, oh well, it's not the end of the world because I'm still making movies. Listen, I'm so grateful. If I'm a movie director, to have made a movie that made a lot of money. Because at the end of the day, that's really, I know we're making art, clearly making art, but we want our art to sell too. And so if you make a good movie and it makes some money and all those sort of things, you're able to bankroll yourself and do other projects, man, congratulations. But at the end, if all that we're working for is just to get the Oscar, just to get the Screen Actor Guild Award, just to get the Golden Globe, then for me it's like if winning it matters that much to where we have to now say, okay, let's make sure we get some token people in here so that way people don't feel snubbed or slighted. It feels cheap to me. It feels cheap to me because now you're saying you never intended on me winning. You just wanted me to be a part of the conversation so that you can get the limelight off you, the spotlight off of you. And when you really intended to give it to who you really wanted to give it to, whoever that person is. And so that's where I'm puzzled at, because it's like on one hand, again, it sucks. It really does suck that we live in a day and age where everything has to become racial and everything has to become polarized. Again, and I'm not knocking the realism behind it all, because yes, we live in America, and America is what it is. Ain't nobody arguing or dissuading that whatsoever. But at some point, it's like, when can we move forward from all of this? When can we, begin to have, meaningful dialogue with one another and meaningful experiences with one another, where it's not always racially charged or gender charged or any of those things. And so again, it's not to knock anybody's experience, because again, my experience of life is different from other people. I live where I live. I work with the people I work with. I am where I am, and my life has been based upon the experiences that I've had. So I'm not, again, knocking anyone for whatever your experience has been. But again, it's just disheartening that in 2020 we're still having these conversations about needing to feel included in something, when in reality, yeah, awards are great and all, but at the end of the day, who cares? Like, so what if you got snubbed? Your movie made $100 million. You really that mad about an Oscar? Your movie got so many doggone reviews when everyone was counting the movie out, and you mad over an Oscar? Really? Like, I know how serious it is when it's your profession, when it's what you want. And so I'm not, again, knocking it. I'm not knocking the fury, the frustration, none of that kind of stuff. But if we say that we want to be judged based on the merit of the work, then at what point do we trust the system in which we are trying to be included in to judge us based on the work and accept when we just didn't make the cut? Like, when do we get to that point? Like, will we ever get to that point? Or will every time a category is majority white, or a category is majority this or majority that, we're always having to go up into another uproar of, oh, I don't feel included. And so go make your money, go make some movies. Like, it's deep, but it ain't that deep. Because again, so what? So just because some people decided, that your movie wasn't the best movie to them, guess what? For every person who paid $1 or $2 or $17.95 to see your movie, those are the opinions who matter the most. Those Oscar people, 9 times out of 10, they didn't even pay to go see the movie. Somebody paid them to go see it. So who cares what they think? Go make your movies. Go make some meaningful experiences to people who care about the experiences that you want to talk about. Forget about the Oscars. Forget about the Screen Actors Guild. Forget about all that stuff, because at the end of the day, so what? So what? The only opinion that matters is yours. Did you make the best movie that you could possibly make? Did you make listen, did you make the best puzzle that you could possibly make? You know, did you make the best podcast that you could possibly make? Did you make the best, whatever it is that you do? Did you make the best album? Did you make the best song that you could do? You know, the only opinion who matters is yours. If you know that you put out good work, then go get yours. Don't let some people sit in a room who may or may not have made a movie. All they do is criticize stuff. Don't let them decide whether or not your greatness is worthy, because they don't matter like that. Yeah, this is the biggest stage in the movie world. Woohoo! But at the end of the day, like if we're gonna rise above this, at some point we have to accept the mechanism in which we're working in, and decide whether or not we're going to make something that gets their attention or not. And the truth be told, what it appears to be is that a lot of the stuff that's being put out there from diverse peoples, it's not speaking to their experience. So why would we expect them to then think that our experiences are worthy of an award? Because unless you're creating things that they want to see, they don't care. It's not speaking to them. But I promise you this, Endgame spoke to me. Endgame got my money. Endgame's going to get some more of my money when I buy a puzzle of Avengers Endgame. And that thing spoke to me more than any movie that I could think of that's out there right now that's gonna win an award in the next couple of weeks. And that's not to knock any of the actors and the directors and any of them who did their job. It just goes to show that those experiences that are nominated for awards, they didn't speak to me. And that's okay. I'm just one person. Again, if you're going to speak to me, I'm going to give you my money. If you're not going to speak to me, more than likely, I'm not going to give you my money. I'm going to wait for you to come out on Redbox. Or I'm going to wait for you to come out on TV. Give DirecTV my money. And then I'll watch your stuff. That's all I got for today on the Mad Hatter's puzzle. I got a little bit of progress made with this puzzle, thanks be to God. And so, again, I'll just be posting my pictures to show y'all what progress I'm making. I'm going to take this and synthesize it in a way to where it's more consumable. But again, thank you all so much for your viewership. Thank you for those who did chime in. Thank you for those who are watching on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Thank you all so much once again for your viewership. Thank you so much for liking my pages. Please go and go to youtube.com at Mad Hatter Puzzle Art. And subscribe to that page. That's where I'll be posting these live streams as well as the edited versions of these podcasts. Go to Facebook and look up at Mad Hatter Puzzle Art. That's where you can find most of my work there. You can also go to madhatterpuzzleart.wixsite.com. Find all the puzzles that I've done, the portfolio, the puzzles that I do have that are on sale right now for those who want some art to put on their wall. And then also go to my Instagram at the Mad Hatter I Am. That's one word, the Mad Hatter I Am. and you can follow me there. I'm posting all the time. And that's where you can find a lot of my stuff there as well. Listen, guys, I love y'all so much. Thank you so much for chiming in, for tuning in, and for paying attention to me for a little while. I'm going to finish up on these brownies and try to do a little more puzzling here before I call it a night. I love y'all. Be safe, be well. Next week, we'll be taking a break as I'm going to go watch my daughter play some basketball and hope they beat the brakes off this Howard team. But again, I love you all, and I will see y'all in a couple of weeks. Stay puzzled.